What's going on, guys? It is Monday evening. It is time for Tropics Watch Live. Hope everybody is doing well on a Monday. We are, of course, watching Ernesto. Post in the comments where you're tuning in from. Would love to see where you guys are watching from. Excuse me, and we're going to talk at length for the first couple of minutes here about what Ernesto could be moving through the Northeast Caribbean, because our friends in the Leeward Islands and to Puerto Rico, we're up first with a hopefully middle-of-the-road tropical storm. Of course, we don't want anything, but we don't want this to get any stronger. So we're going to take a look at some of the possibilities there. Already have some comments about Newfoundland further down the road. We're going to talk about some model solutions there and why we have some back and forth going with some of the models and some of the things that we're going to be watching for over the next couple of really 7 to 10 days. This is going to be one of those long ones, the painstakingly watching them. And then, of course, right in between the Caribbean and Canada is Bermuda, and a lot of the modeling has us in the crosshairs as well as the official forecast. So we are going to get all into that as well. Post in the comments where you're tuning in from. We are coming at you live on clickorlando.com, News 6 Plus, the Just Weather YouTube channel, and on the News 6 clickorlando.com channel. So we're going to get all into this. Again, I'll get into some of the comments momentarily here, but first we are going to get at it. Just have to switch back to my source. That, of course, is Ernesto. It got its act together about 3 o'clock this afternoon. National Hurricane Center officially raised it up to a tropical storm. It organized. It was that potential tropical cyclone, meaning that it had the potential to become a tropical cyclone. See, it's hard for even me. And they wanted to give the islands an early heads up. So it wasn't scientifically, meteorologically a tropical cyclone, but it had the potential to be one. But now it officially is as of 5 o'clock this morning. We'll take the latest National Hurricane Center forecast. We're going to go up the line here. So, laissez bum, as we are going to get into, I butchered that pronunciation. Sorry, I practiced that many, many times for our friends into Martinique and getting into All Saints and Antigua and Barbuda. And then as we move into, so that's going to be right up on late tomorrow evening. Early tomorrow morning, I should say, today is Monday, so we're talking about 2 o'clock tomorrow morning, that we're going to start to feel some of that tropical storm force impacts into parts of the Leeward Islands, and then getting into late Tuesday night into early Wednesday morning. You see it right there, closing in on the northeast side of Puerto Rico. Now, remember, this is a center. The cone is a representation where the center of the storm could go, and we're going to look at some of the high-resolution modeling as well coming up through the course of this show, which will run until about 8:30 Eastern time. But again, if it bounces, we'd like it to bounce further away from us in Puerto Rico, but there's still also the opportunity for it to go to the southern side, which would be on the worst of the impacts, relatively speaking. Again, I know there's been a lot of people commenting about Maria. This is going to be nothing like that. So again, while this could be impactful, taking power out, mudslides, landslides, things like that, we're not looking at that kind of level stuff. So I want to be clear about that, and I want to kind of put some of that at ease, because I know last week we had some questions on that. And then here we go towards the end of the cone. Here is Bermuda. There's going to be the opportunity, too, as we get into the weekend, for this to achieve major hurricane status. Right now, it is officially forecast from the Hurricane Center to be a Cat 2 110 mile per hour storm. But certainly all in here, the environment is pretty favorable. I would not be surprised if we pop a major hurricane, which would be the second one of the year. A lot of questions about the United States for my viewers in Florida. This is not coming to Florida, okay? Looked like we may have been able to get it a little closer to the Bahamas when we talked last week. It's the timing differences with the trough, that dip in the jet stream, which we will break down at length in a few minutes. So good news for Florida, good news for the Bahamas, and pretty good news for the Turks and Caicos as well. I think good for the Carolinas. If there's going to be some mischief with this, it is going to be into New England and then into the Canadian Maritimes, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, those areas, because of the steering pattern. And we're going to talk about that at length coming up in a couple of minutes. So my Canadian friends and people from New England, stick around with me for a couple of minutes, but I do want to get into the Caribbean side of this, as we are going to be up first. This is kind of laughable at the time. I mean, it's a good thing, but that is the current wind field of Ernesto. It is teeny tiny as it treks in this direction, give or take. So again, there's not a whole big wind field, which is good. It will have the potential, though, to bring some heavy rain, as we saw before. It is kind of a wide, still not the greatest organized. I mean, that is a good thing, again, as we're already getting some of those scattered thunderstorms from the outer banding features of Ernesto all the way into Antigua, Barbuda, maybe closing on Culebra as well, just a few of those outer bands. So that's what you're going to be dealing with now, and then the center of this thing gets close tomorrow. So what I want to show you now is kind of the wind forecast going forward. So I have here, I don't have any numbers or town names on here, but what we're going to be able to do is with this, we can check in to see the winds. And I mean, again, thankfully at this point, it is not impressive. I will say I am showing you a global model, so it is going to underdo the wind of this more mesoscale type feature or lower end synoptic scale feature, but we're going to be watching that. Let me put this into play mode here, and you see the numbers update. And this, what we are looking at here, is the European rendition. So here is the center of circulation moving through Culebra, moving through parts of the Virgin Islands, and notice the strongest of the winds, relatively speaking, are on the northern side of the system. I want to kind of switch. We're going to stay on the same gear, but I wanted to show you one of the hurricane models really quick. The HAFS B. If you've been following hurricane models, and post in the comments if you like to do that or not. And if you're familiar with what the HAFS B is, it's the new run. It's these new hurricane models from the National Hurricane Center and NOAA, and it's been doing fairly good. So what I want to do is I want to bring that in. So let me change my computer source and pull that in for you. So now this is going to be the HAFS B. So let's back this up and notice it's not that strong. 997, some heavy rain sliding through. And here we go, getting closer to the Virgin Islands. So the HAFS B, which has done very, very good with the track of these storms so far this season, has a 992 millibar low. That's likely a tropical storm, closing in on the Virgin Islands, and then coming in, kind of lifting up on the southeast corner of Puerto Rico, and then really starting its lift to the north. And then you see the almost rapid strengthening. Now we're talking about a 956 millibar tropical system sliding up, and I'm not sure this. I think this goes out just to Bermuda. I mean, we would take this for sure. Some of the global models want to put this like right smack dab in Bermuda, and I'll show you those in a second. But we'll take the outer bands of a hurricane rather than a direct hit from the eye wall for sure. All right, so now we're going to zoom this out, and we're looking at our main weather computer here. So let me get back to the actual output of that computer. Here are the spaghetti models through the upcoming weekend. So there's a little bit of things that we'll explain here, and we're really going to dive into when I show you the upper level pattern. But models are tightly packed into the Caribbean. Most of them want to keep the center, which would be lovely, off the corner of Puerto Rico. But again, really any one of those lines are still in play. Those are the different computer models here. So important to note that there are some that go crazy here. I believe these are the climatology ones in the forward motion, so we're going to throw those ones out. But then we see the clustering here. The official forecast only goes out to 5 days. That's at OFCL right there. And then as we go further up, Bermuda is obviously right there, and a lot of them converge on Bermuda, which obviously we don't want. We're going to back this up, and then notice how there's that little bend in the model that goes back towards the west and then back to the east. That is all because of an upper level trough. So before I check questions for the first time, we're going to look at some more models in just 1 second. I want to show you what exactly is going on that is making I said mischief or shenanigans before of Ernesto during its long-term life. So we took a look at some of the potential impacts for the Caribbean. So the deal with this is this upper trough right here that's hanging off of New England and the mid-Atlantic, that has weakened the Bermuda high. So that is the reason right there that we have that abrupt turn after it impacts Puerto Rico, and it kind of misses the Turks and Caicos. Maybe the extreme southeast Turks and Caicos still need to be watching for this. But then you see it lift north, and then that's what kind of guides us into Bermuda, which is right here where I put the crosshairs, okay? The next deal is with this. We're watching this trough here, and that is going to be so important for what happens from New England into the Canadian Maritimes, because right now it's a neutral trough, so it's kind of oriented north to south, maybe a little bit of a positive tilt, which is oriented southwest to northeast. But let's take this out in time. Notice how it tries to yank it a little bit. So it tries to take it and grab it, and it jogs it back to the west. So this is the 12Z run. So this is this morning's run of the GFS, and it's all gonna be, and it's way too early to tell, because let me take this back. Right now, this thing is out in the western U.S. That trough, that dip in the jet stream. Actually, in the Pacific Ocean, didn't go back far enough. So now let me take this forward again, and we're going to see what happens with the 18Z run. So there was a subtle change there, but you may have noticed it. It backed to the west just a little bit, and it's showing and it was slower. The reason for that is, look at this, all this red color here. This is going to be high pressure at about 30,000 feet, or at about 15,000 feet. This is going to be the 500 millibar level. And it shows high pressure building back in. So that is going to help to nudge it back to the west. There still could be an escape route, but we don't want this thing to really slow down, because the slower that thing goes, the better opportunity this trough is going to have to pull it in. Again, New England, it's unlikely, but it's not zero. We're really going to be watching for Nova Scotia and Newfoundland. And look at the change, that little subtle change that I showed you. Again, let me back that up. There was the 12Z run, and then let me fast forward it to 18Z. See that little jolt down? Look at what that did. Now that puts it a direct hit in Nova Scotia, and then it goes way into Newfoundland. And then the that high pressure builds back in. So that really leads me to my next thing, too, is that for the southeast U.S., literally, this trough right here, let me back it up, saved Florida and the Carolinas in the southeast corner of the United States. Because if that wasn't here, look how quickly that high pressure builds back in, all that red. It would have guided it east further. So we can thank this trough, at least in the southeast corner of the United States, for helping it go. Now, we hope it doesn't take it too far toward Bermuda. We hope we split the difference there, and we hope that it continues to go up and out. But it's all going to depend on what happens here. So the trend to watch over the next couple of days is, where is this feature, and how strong is that Bermuda high building back in? And the trend has been for that to be a little stronger, and the trough to be a little slower, which can help to grab it in off of the Atlantic. All right. So here we go. Let's check in on some of the comments. Hey, Margaret, watching from Florida. Welcome. Let me get to my comment. Florida is not going to get any rain. So the northeast coast, and you may have just joined before we were talking about that, but there is the opportunity for the northeast coast to be impacted, certainly by rip currents and high surf. Like, I think that is going to happen. So that's more of the indirect. That's more of the indirect impacts. I still think the potential is going to be there for direct impacts up the New England coastline. It's going to be close, but if we continue to watch that Bermuda high build a little stronger, that is going to allow it to come a little bit further west. Hey, what's going on in St. Croix? Hey, Levy County, how's it going? I do not think if you are in Aruba, you're going to encounter Ernesto. This is going to stay out of your part of the Caribbean. So you should be good to go. Okay, so definitely be watching this. So I'm showing you the wrong screen. I'm showing you all my chats that I'm pulling over. Let me get you back to the forecast cone. We had a question, too, about let me get back to the official forecast here. This is the official forecast from the Hurricane Center, so we can do that there. Somebody asked about the movement. It's moving at 28 miles an hour. So, and that's the other thing, too. The reason why it's not going to be stronger, thankfully, before it gets to the Caribbean, it is moving so fast. When they are moving that fast, it's hard for the storms to be what we call vertically stacked. These storms like to be like a stack of pancakes, and rather than like the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Okay, so like they like to be straight up and down, and when it's moving that fast, its low-level center and mid-level center really aren't intact, or co-located, so it really can't start to do its heat engine thing and feed off the warmer water. Okay, so we were supposed to leave for Bermuda on Wednesday. Very worried we will be there for 8 days. Okay, so by Wednesday, the storm is going to be here. It would have made its turn. So the forecast should start to become a little more clear for Bermuda by that point. We're going to have more hurricane hunter missions going in this thing. And then we'll be able to see, okay, are we on the right side of this cone? Are we right smack dab in the center? Or are we on the left-hand side, the western side? And that would have big implications here. But you see how wide the cone gets. Because of that. But, I mean, at right check now, when I showed you the models earlier, by the time it gets to Friday and into Saturday, it could be close to Bermuda. So that is something you definitely need to be watching going forward over the next couple of days, and just hoping, again, that we kind of split the uprights here and it goes either in between the U.S. and Bermuda or just goes to the east of Bermuda completely. That would be the best-case scenario there as we watch that. I don't think this one's going to hit Jersey. I think this one's going to stay away from Jersey. But if you're going to the Jersey Shore, things like that, the beaches are going to be really chewed up. It's going to be really choppy because it could get close. Again, for the most part, though, I do think it's going to stay away from Jersey. I think if there's any issues, it's going to be maybe up into New England. But again, there's no model guidance suggesting New England is going to get hit. There will be some model guidance that suggests that Newfoundland and Nova Scotia get hit. So we're watching you guys especially close with that outside shot that it comes a little bit further west into New England because of the timing of that trough. Stephen Weather, I do think there's an opportunity for it. We'll get to the water temperatures here in just 1 second. I had some questions about that. First, I'll show you the tropical fuel as I'm nailing down the actual water temperature. This is going to be the tropical cyclone heat potential. And what we're kind of seeing now is we're in that medium to high where it's going to be. So again, it's staying out of the central and western Caribbean where it is crazy. I do think it's missing the Gulf Stream, but still where you see the green and yellow, that's going to be its potential to do something really as it lifts north of Puerto Rico. The wind shear is pretty low as well in that area. Let me go to my water temperature graphic. I have that in here somewhere. So stand by and keep the comments coming. And by the way, if you're finding this helpful while I'm looking for the water temperature graphic, hit that subscribe button. That's my shameless plug. We like having you guys here. Thank you so much for being here and for your support and all that stuff. If you're watching on New 6 Plus, welcome as well. All right, so here we go with the water temperatures, and of course I showed you the heat potential. Now what the heat potential is, it's not only the warm water at the surface, but it's how deep that is. So those brighter colors represent how deep that water goes, but the surface level is going to be plenty warm. So let me get zoom out. Let me get right back in and get my dabber out, and we can take a look at what the water temperature is. So as this thing leaves the Caribbean and leaves Puerto Rico, it's going to be getting into water temperatures in the mid-80s, and then all through this region here, getting up to Bermuda, we're still in the mid-80s. So there's not a lot of drop-off as we're going north, Then, as we get north of Bermuda, this is where we typically see it get a little cooler. And then there we go, temperatures into the low to mid 80s, closer to the Atlantic coast, where we see the yellow start to pop up. Now, this would be likely some rapid weakening into Newfoundland and Nova Scotia, because look at how cool the water is. I mean, we're talking mid 60s as we close in on the Maine coast. And again, it's likely going to stay away from the Maine coast, but really all through here, that is what we're doing, even like right up on the shoreline in the mid 50s. So it is very, very chilly, especially for hurricane standards. So it would likely have a rapid weakening take place depending upon the forward speed at that point. So that is also something to keep in mind. Hey, what's going on, Allison? Welcome from Central Florida. Appreciate you tuning in. Okay, so I have a question about for St. Martin Island, what the worst case scenario would be. Let me go back to the high resolution model here, and I'm gonna try to explain, and we're gonna look at this super close with some of the latest data that was just coming in before I hopped on the live stream. So we're going back, and then into St. What I want to show you, okay, so it actually looks like it's pretty. So right here, this is going to be early on Tuesday morning. And what I'm showing you here is the relative humidity, but we can also, and then also the wind speed here. So that L marks the center there, and then notice how we have those wind barbs that are those counterclockwise wind barbs just to the west. At this point, we don't have them completely co-located sitting on top of each other. So therefore, this thing isn't going to be able to really take advantage of the warm water. Unlike when we had Beryl coming through, that thing was already a beast. That heat engine was already going, and then once it got over the water, it exploded. Okay? The deal with this is, and you see, again, there's where my mouse is there. That's the mid-level center. And then there is the surface center. They're not co-located. So watch what happens here. We're going to go forward into the future. And then notice by the time it does get towards the Virgin Islands, notice how, okay, that those arrows or those wind barbs, as we call them, and the center low pressure they're stacked. So at this point, you'll see the pressure start to drop a little bit more. There's 994, 992, 992, 988. Still, hopefully not enough time for this thing to become a hurricane by the time it gets, but once it starts to get stacked like that, then it can start its strengthening process, and then it has it as a 988 going through the Culebra area, and then maybe the southeast corner of Puerto Rico. So that's what we are watching. So yeah, in St. Martin, I think the worst for you is going to be maybe some gusty winds and the potential for some flooding rains. I don't think this thing is going to be able to get too strong. Still impactful, but still, I don't think it's going to be able to get too strong before impacting the Caribbean islands. Geez, lost my train of thought. All right. So the other thing that I wanted to touch on, and we can get into the seasonal forecast that the Hurricane Center updated last week as well. But I wanted to show you this kind of the latest breaking news, if you will, not storm related. Well, I guess technically storm related, but we talked about this at length on the channel. It's the new experimental cone from the National Hurricane Center. So you see it right here. This is, let me get you to another kind of deal here. This is what the new cone looks like. It's an experiment, meaning that the Hurricane Center is trying it out. and feedback from the users, that's us and you, will determine if this helps convey some of the impacts. It's a little hard to see the difference here because Puerto Rico is not as large as the United States mainland because of the difference here. But if you look closely, and I'll show you the traditional cone that's going to run side by side. If you do look close at Puerto Rico, and this is only going to be true for the United States, notice how the blue is covering the entire island of Puerto Rico. So that means it's showing on the map the inland portion of the hurricane or tropical storm hazards. The reason why they're doing this, and this kind of illustrates nicely here, note that the western side of Puerto Rico is outside of the cone. Okay, we are outside of the cone on the southwest corner of Puerto Rico, but the impacts of the storm are much bigger than the cone. So they want to try to take away that false sense of security if you're just focused right smack dab on the cone. And notice the cone kind of disappears a little bit as it goes over land as well. So Ernesto is going to be the first storm that the Hurricane Center is using. They were aiming for the middle of August, since they made the announcement earlier in the year. They were going to do this. There you go. There is Ernesto, hoping to help clear up some of the confusion with the cone. In terms of the old one, here's the old one. So a little different. Notice that, again, Puerto Rico is small, so it's kind of hard to tell, but notice the entire island is not blue. It's just the coast. So before, on the traditional cone, just the watches and warnings along the coast were there. Notice also there is this hatched area for day 4 and day 5 out here. Now that's all just that white, all that kind of see-through white. But that's the big difference here, that the cone fades out over land and that those inland watches and warnings become prevalent and likely extend outside of the cone because they're forecasting the impacts of the tropical system, whether it's tropical storm or hurricane. They want to make sure that everybody inland is taking it seriously and getting the correct information here rather than just kind of looking at that cone. So just wanted to pass that along, that's kind of weather history here from the Hurricane Center perspective here with the new cone that they are trying. So while we're at it, post in the comments. I would like to know, again, it's kind of hard. It'd be easier if it was over, don't want it over the lower 48, but to show a bigger area where the watches and warnings get plastered in there. But I'd like to know your thoughts on that change. Post those in the comments. To find this anyway, you're going to go to the Hurricane Center, weather.gov, find the hurricanes part, and then just click on the warnings cone, and then right there, right smack dab in the middle, click here for the new experimental cone, and then it pops up. So you can kind of look at them both, but they're going to run side by side, so the traditional cone is not going anywhere. But that's new for 2024. And then the last thing that I wanted to show you guys is, let me get back to my other weather computer. I've got so many. We got a lot of toys to play with. But if you missed this last week, Hurricane Center updated their midseason forecast. They always do their preseason. This one is this is not the one that I wanted to show you. It was since updated, but they kept it the same. So out of all that, they really just shaved off one for their thing. So they are still expecting 17 to 24 named storms, with 8 to 13 becoming hurricanes and then 4 to 7 becoming major. So they are still expecting an extremely active season. There it is. I had 2 in there. So there it is graphically. The yellow is their midseason update. And, of course, now to date, we've had 5 named storms, including Ernesto today. 2 of those becoming hurricanes. That's likely going to be 3 in a few days. And then we might have a second major depending upon if it can get strong enough prior to Bermuda. So we'll wait and see. But that is where we stand right now. And again, a lot of the season still left. Thankfully, right now, there's nothing brewing behind Ernesto. But that orange box is where we go. We are now into that period where we start to climb the ladder significantly. That middle of August. Once we get to the middle of August, that's the meat and potatoes of the hurricane season. More than 85% of the tropical activity falls from this point on. So we're ahead of schedule by about 10 days in terms of named storms as well, just to throw that out there. So again, while I know it hasn't been like gangbusters 2005 or 2020, there's 85% or more of the season still to come, and that's what we are going to be watching closely. And again, I showed you about the Bermuda high coming back a little bit, how quickly it forces back to the west after. We really don't want to see any storms build back behind Ernesto because there's a quick replenishing of that Bermuda high. Alrighty, guys, thank you a ton for tuning in. This has been another great edition of Tropics Watch Live. Okay, in St. Croix, let me just get St. Croix real quick, because just in case, looking for some information here. We were talking about St. Croix, of course, for the Caribbean. There's an opportunity for, I think, your tropical storm warnings are in effect. Let me go back. And I mean, this is the HAFS B that has, whoops, wrong. Let me get that back again. Sorry. So St. Croix hanging around right here. So that's going to be maybe 60, 70 mile per hour wind gust, 6+ inches of rain. So it's going to be pretty windy for St. Croix if the HAFS B is going to win. And it does look like there's the opportunity for it to get into the Northeast Caribbean for a little bit of time and then work through Culebra and eastern Puerto Rico. So that is that. And the timing on that, by the way, would be Tuesday. Would be during the day on Tuesday. Let me see. Here's the radar, or the future radar, I should say. So, for instance, the timeline through that, you have some rain starting to increase, some outer bands tomorrow afternoon. That's going to be about 3 o'clock. And then here we go into the evening where the worst of the weather is going to be. So, again, 60, 70 mile per hour wind gusts potentially, and a lot of heavy rain. So a strong tropical storm would be your impacts. Hey, Melissa, I do. Yes, I mentioned you earlier, I believe, when you asked about the rain. Oh, sorry. I saw another one. My bad. Alrighty, guys. Hey, thanks so much. If you happen to find this content helpful and you want to hang out with us and talk about the weather, because that's what we do here, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. We'd love to have you along for the ride and to give you some of the best information that we can give, and we like to have this weather conversation as well. I lost my comment thing. I have so many tabs open. I think I say this all the time as well. There's my guy, Weather Center Nazario. Give him a follow as well. He is great, by the way. So go give him a follow. Great weather information coming from him, as always. And yeah, if you enjoyed this and found this helpful, again, hit that subscribe button. Melissa, we'll see you at 11 o'clock tonight. Thank you, PB, for subscribing. Thank you, Daniel. Appreciate you guys. Again, wishing everybody the best. We're keeping a close eye on this for the Caribbean, Bermuda, maybe New England. Again, I think we're going to be okay, but still, it's a little, with that trough there, I never want to say never on that part. And then really, then for maybe Eastern Canada, Atlantic Canada, we're going to be watching for you way down the road, getting into next weekend. Alrighty, guys. Appreciate you all. We'll catch you soon. Be safe.